Glad you could join us today on EarthFile. Welcome to the program. I'm Ayola Kasim. Today, agriculture and other land use activities account for over 25% of greenhouse gas emissions and devastating natural capital losses, deepening rural poverty and increasing vulnerability to climate change impact. 800 million people go hungry, while over 2 billion are overweight or obese. 500 million smallholder farmers live under the poverty line. The smallholder farmer faces a lot of challenges which affect the productivity. Today, we start with what some farmers are doing in Kenya to reduce emissions. Do stay with us. Every day, a truckload of organic waste collected from the municipal market in Kitale is offloaded at this yard in Kenya's Rift Valley region. The rotten vegetables and fruits will be used as raw material to produce compost manure. David Ngige started Jadopen in 2009, a community-based initiative that wants to find better ways of disposing waste generated in the city to improve soil quality in farms here. Dajopen, which has 34 members, recycles and packages organic waste that piles up in bins at markets and hotels in the town. After sorting out the trash, organic waste is dumped in a pit. Organic enzymes are then added to help in the decomposition. A layer of leaves is added later to introduce nitrogen, and the pit is then covered in soil.
After decomposting for 4 to 6 weeks, the compost is ready, and then we remove it, and then we add some calcium from eggshells, from crushed eggshells, and then from there we sieve it, and after sieving it, we package it in bags ready for sale.
Kitale is an agricultural town and a key breadbasket for Kenya. Many small-scale farmers here have grown the country's staple crop, maize, and other foods, using synthetic fertilizers to boost their yields over the years. Scientists say soils in the region do not have enough organic matter and are increasingly becoming acidic, partly because of overuse of ammonium-based fertilizers. Farmers are now being pushed to increase use of organic manure in farms to help improve soil quality. Ngige says demand for his fertilizer is growing. He plans to expand the plant to process more fertilizer in future.
In the last planting season, we were able to make 2,560 bags of this organic fertilizer, each weighing 50 kilograms. At each bag we sell at 1,250.
A 50-kilogram bag of synthetic fertilizer costs about $30. Beth Kamal has been using the compost manure for 4 years now. She grows vegetables, maize, and fruits on her 1-acre plot.
This fertilizer is affordable because it costs half the price of synthetic fertilizer, so it is very pocket-friendly for farmers. On top of that, the yield we get from maize has improved. We used to get 5 bags with synthetic fertilizer, but this one gave us more than 9 bags of maize. We see it has improved things.
Scientists say soil degradation is a major problem. It affects about 180 million people in sub-Saharan Africa alone, costing them $68 billion per year, according to a 2014 report by Agriculture for Impact. Climate change, desertification, the depletion of mineral nutrients, improper use of fertilizer, and a lack of infrastructure are compounding the problem.
Organic farming will really solve a lot of problems concerning organic carbon, because organic material is the source of all the nutrients, and it is also able to regulate the soil pH. Once we have our organic carbon right, organic matter right in our farms, we will not worry so much about soil acidity.
Experts say organic agriculture is generally well suited to small-scale farmers because they usually do not have much cash to purchase external inputs chemical inputs, pesticides, or chemical fertilizers. But organic food is still a niche market around the world. Many people choose organic products to avoid pesticides and GMOs. But some experts have said that organic can help mitigate climate change, as well as helping farmers to adapt to changing climate conditions.
It's not really good enough to just talk about production. You could bring from smallholders to the processors, to the market, to the consumers. By bringing everybody together, you could actually secure that the resilience and to make that value chain much more resilient and much more cleaner, greener, and sustainable.
In sub-Saharan Africa, extreme drought already impedes people's ability to grow food and rear livestock. Pastoralists and agro-pastoralists will need to adapt to changes in water regimes in order to maintain their food security and well-being. The global food system's impact on biodiversity, ecosystems, and ecosystem services is overwhelming. With 40% of the planet's landmass being used to grow food, the potential for environmental degradation will only increase as agriculture continues to expand. At the same time, nearly 2 billion hectares of cropland, grazing land, forests, and woodlands are degraded. This has negative impact on ecosystem services, including the provision of fresh water, food, fuel, and fiber, clean air and water, climate regulation, and habitat.
I think every minister should be thinking about what can nutritious food do for the things I really care about. So in agriculture, a focus on nutritious food can help raise productivity that has stalled in staple foods. Focus now on where the marginal returns might be even higher in productivity in these kinds of foods. If you're a minister of industry and you're trying to think about how do I modernize my industry sector and make it more concentrated and improve food safety, I should think very hard about nutritious food labs. I should think very hard about nutritious food, modernizing nutritious food processing facilities. So I think there are many, many win-wins. Ministries of Environment should focus on nutritious food because that's how they reduce CO2 emissions and other greenhouse gas emissions.
The global challenge is to find sustainable ways to feed a growing population. The world needs a more sustainable food system, one that embeds sustainability from farm to fork, generates agricultural commodities without deforestation and habitat conversion, and restores soils and degraded areas back into natural ecosystems or into productivity.
We hear a lot about how businesses are responsible for our food systems that are either broken or not pointing in the right direction or dysfunctional, and businesses are a big part of the problem. But governments don't realize how many levers they have and how influential they can be in changing the way their food system is set up. So a couple of examples. Most public sector agricultural R&D, research and development, is really focused on cereals. And that is entirely appropriate sort of 30 or 40 years ago when filling bellies is the main objective, getting rid of hunger. Now, hunger is still a massive problem and it's increasing in some parts of the world, including in Africa. But an even bigger problem is nourishing people, making sure people eat more of the right kinds of foods and less of the wrong kinds of foods. And so agricultural R&D should be much more skewed away from cereals towards fruits and vegetables, pulses, nuts, fish, eggs, dairy, the things that are too expensive in many African and Asian and European markets for people to consume. They're being priced out. Agricultural R&D, raising the productivity, is one way of lowering the price and making it more available. Another way that governments could get more nutritious food to their people is through public procurement. Many governments are massive purchasers of foods for schools, for hospitals, for the judicial system. Rather than just buy cereals, think about putting some pulses into that mix. That's a way of building the demand for pulses and then stimulating the supply.
The last decade has witnessed a growing momentum around transforming the way smallholder farmers manage land in sub-Saharan Africa. To help improve smallholder farming, governments and development partners are working to create the policies, financial mechanisms, technological innovations and market opportunities While these efforts are crucial for improving productivity, they do not address the long-term sustainability and resilience of the smallholder production systems. This is particularly the case in the dry lands, where the threat of land and soil degradation, water scarcity, and loss of biodiversity looms large.
Look at the way the food systems are changing and how dynamic and complex they are in many respects. It is very difficult for an ordinary farmer to understand those changes and therefore to change with the changes that are happening. As a result, they are quite often left behind the change process. Yes, they are changing, but maybe not as fast as they should because they don't have access to the information that will motivate them to change. So investing in information, understanding, data, knowledge, awareness for farmers and the structures that they work with or that support them is so fundamental a starting point for change to happen. That's the first point. The second point really is that it is not only farmers themselves who need to change. It is a whole system that needs to change. And quite often, the burden of change, at least from a farmer's perspective, is placed more on the farmer than on the rest of the system because the farmer is the one who is directly interacting with the environment. But everyone is complicit in crime, so to speak. So why should it be the business of the farmers alone to grapple with the problem and not everyone in the entire chain? So I think the point being that we need to crowd in everyone in the change process. That cost of change, the transitionist cost, needs to be borne by everyone along the chain. That narrative, unfortunately, is not coming so strong from the farmer's side. But I think we need to really amplify the message that it is not only farmers that need to change. In any case, the behavior of farmers themselves is a function of what happens outside the production area of the value chain. So let's look at the entire system.
Agriculture has always been deeply dependent on the weather, with farmers needing a steady mixture of sun, warmth, and rains in order to reliably produce the food that all of humanity depends on for survival. Now, these once predictable growing cycles are at risk from climate change, and smallholders are on the front lines.
If change is not going to be rewarding in significant terms, people are not going to be motivated to change. So what is this compelling value proposition that will enable a farmer to change in such a way that it becomes more environmentally responsive, nutritionally responsive, and in many other ways? What is the compelling value proposition we're selling? And is it going to bring significant outcomes to the farm? Sustainable outcomes for that matter. How do we ensure that by rebalancing the power relations between the producers and everyone else along the chain, you are able to claw back value to the farmer without necessarily changing the configuration of the current structures, but just trying to ensure that there's transparency, there's openness, and there's fairness and equity in the distribution of risk and return. That should enable farmers to do much more and earn much more from what they do.
About 80% of the world's food is produced by family farms, according to the United Nations. So climate change's effect on agriculture could have repercussions that reach far beyond individual farmers and their families. Unless humans take significant steps to reverse course and cut greenhouse gas emissions, the situation may continue to intensify.
I think we are all recognize none of us on our own can really achieve that transformation. Everybody really should come together to do their part, to complement to each other towards that and a big goal. Only by working together, I think we can do it.
According to the Food and Agriculture Organization, more than 80% of the world's farms are smaller than 2 hectares. Yet in many low-income countries, these farms are responsible for meeting the needs of increasingly mobile populations with demand for a variety of fruits, vegetables, meat, and other agricultural products. Farmers may not be well equipped to shift their production toward more diverse or unfamiliar crops, It is therefore imperative that the world focuses on increasing smallholder farmer productivity now to shifting democratic trends and support future food security. More than 70% of the African population is engaged in agriculture, yet the region spends between $30 to $40 billion annually on food import. The continent currently represents a $300 billion food market that is projected to grow to $1 trillion by 2030. Experts believe the opportunities are there, so also the challenges.
Right now, we do not have consistent and reliable data on many things. Production, consumption, nutrition, diets, what we eat, we don't. So we must strengthen our capacity to connect more reliable, more good data, not just production, consumption, diets, health, nutrition must be included in our data connection. And that's the government's job. Government has to work with international agencies like the World Bank, FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization, AFDB, African Development Bank, to connect good data, more frequent data. With the data, we can really track, monitor the progress. We can really tell who are the poor, who are the vulnerable, and we can design certain policy to target our resources to make sure that poor and hungry people will benefit from our investment, from our policy. So that's investment issue. The second is capacity in analyzing the data, whether the government, whether the universities, or even NGO think tanks must have the capacity to analyze the data connected, to propose good recommendations for decision makers to make the right decision. So the capacity is also very important in analyzing the data and so on. And finally, we must use the data to ensure accountability. If we have good data, if we have good metrics, we must communicate all these metrics to normal citizens so they know what we have been doing to track the progress and to give the government a pressure to make big changes to benefit poor people.
Sub-Saharan Africa's population is the fastest growing of any region in the world and on track to reach 1.4 billion by 2030. To stay on course for food and nutritional security, agriculture experts say represents a solution if the African governments can do better going forward. The drastic rise in food prices has raised serious concerns about food nutrition security across the world. While a coordinated response is urgently needed at international and regional levels, the effectiveness of country-level response is critical for responding to the crisis.
Current policy supports the production of stable foods, maize, wheat, cassava, and so on. But in the meantime, fruits, vegetables, maybe dairy products are not supported by the government. Whether it's production, the varieties, value chain development, they are not. So let's fix the policy. Stop, well, not reduce the subsidies to some stable foods, crops, and to use that money, same amount of money, to support the production of more nutritious, healthy foods. So in this case, you have a balanced diet. Yeah, some maize, some cassava, some yam, but in the meantime, and not fruits, vegetables, chicken, eggs, fish. So then you will be healthier, and probably it's also good for the environment.
Given projected increases in global temperatures, which are likely to give rise to longer and more intense droughts, in addition to greater weather variability across parts of sub-Saharan Africa, the risks facing many of the world's most exposed households, those that rely on rainfall agriculture for their livelihood, are more pressing than ever. Analysis by the Africa Risk Capacity suggests that a widespread catastrophic drought in sub-Saharan Africa today could cost upwards of $3 billion in emergency assistance, which will put an unprecedented financial strain on African countries and donor countries' aid budgets.
They have competing priorities. So you are asking a government to look at tomorrow, day after tomorrow, when he has issues in front of him. You have education, you have health, you have security, for example. And security is tapping more and more resources from us. But having said that, remember, African Risk Capacity, ARC, was created by the African head of states. It means they are becoming aware that something must be done. And 33 countries have signed just in 3 years, quickly. So we are not pushing because we have to build the institution and then provide services. So it's difficult to be strong on the ground and then be able to provide the services. So we are going slowly. So the institution is there. Now they are seeing the proof of concept. And the proof of concept is encouraging people to come more and more. We have a lot of requests. ARC is becoming known.
As currently structured, the system for responding to natural disasters is not as timely or equitable as it should or could be, with much of the cost borne by farmers. International assistance through the appeals system is secured on a largely ad hoc basis after disaster strikes, and governments are forced to reallocate funds in national budget from essential development activities to crisis response. Only then can relief be mobilized toward the people who need it most, and it is often too late. Lives are lost, assets are depleted, and development gains reversed, forcing more people into chronic hunger, malnutrition, and destitution across the continent.
The first thing we do is to come to in a country, sensitize people, help them to understand what is disaster risk management really, and what is the risk profile of that country. Meaning, how the country is prone to drought, to flood, to cyclones. Some have all, some have one, some have two. And at that point, since you know what may happen to the country, you can then decide what kind of response you want to have. That's called preparedness. You prepare yourself, you have a plan. But you know what may happen, you have a plan, then you want to know how do you finance that plan. And that's where the ADRIFI program comes in. You say, let me take insurance, for example, and then if something happens, it will trigger, and then the insurance will give me the money to cover my people. Now, in our cycle, and this is important in responding to your question, we have set up the obligation for those who want to get access to our insurance to have a contingency plan that is pre-approved by the Board of African Risk Capacity. What does it mean? It means you cannot just go and say, hey, here I am, I want to have an insurance. No. You have to say, this is my risk, this is the part of that risk or the totality of the risk I want to cover, and I want to take an insurance that will help me to do that. Now, that plan should be approved first because it is robust, it is solid, then we allow you to have an insurance. So why? Because in such a situation, because you have a plan, it is robust, it is approved, it's a peer review kind of approval, then when the disaster occurs, when the money comes, you know where the money is going. It's not going somewhere else. It's going exactly for that purpose because you had planned earlier and you have allocated the resources to all the activities you wanted to do with.
Contingent funds linked to early warning systems and appropriate contingency plans linked with credible national response mechanisms offer the best solution for delivering more effective and efficient responses to weather shocks in the short term and can facilitate longer-term investment in increasing food security, disaster risk reduction, and climate resilience. By shifting away from the old paradigm of treating the effect after a crisis occurs, Africa can move towards effectively managing its risks. The challenges facing agriculture in Africa are many, but progress in the sector is possible when backed with political will, the right policies, and technology transfer to improve productivity and reduce post-harvest losses. There is also the need for farmers to have access to quality seeds and, of course, land reforms that will free up lands for food production. That's our program for the day. Thank you for watching. Our inbox @channelstv.com is available for your comments and questions. You can also follow me on Twitter. From me, Ayola Kasim, and the crew here in Lagos, it's bye for now.